the Kalam cosmological argument for the existence of God, and the idea that the argument can be defeated with the notion that time is an illusion. There's no such thing as time, because the Kalam cosmological argument for the existence of God relies upon time. Now, for the sake of this video, I'm going to assume that you are somewhat familiar with this argument for the existence of God. It's interesting because arguments for the existence of God really lend themselves to moving of the goalpost fallacies, because there's a million different holes you can attempt to poke in them, and so you can say, this thing, and then I can, take a while to debunk that, and then by the time I'm finally through debunking that, you switch over to the other thing, that always happens. But the idea is that time is an illusion. Now, for a quick review, the Kalam cosmological argument works a little bit like this. The way it works is time cannot have been going on forever, because that would be an actually infinite number of things. Therefore, time was begun, our world, our universe of time in which we exist, was begun. It was caused to exist by something, or else it happened for no reason at all. The idea that it happened for no reason at all is irrational. Therefore, something outside of time caused it to exist. This is the case because if the thing that caused it to exist inhabited time as well, then that thing would be infinitely old, and we would also have the infinitely large number of things problem yet again. So, this thing that caused the universe to exist can either be a non-personal entity or a personal being with free will and choice. If it is a non-personal entity, then it causes the universe to exist based on its properties, and the properties that it has are timeless. Therefore, the universe would timelessly be beginning to exist and never actually get older, and not be a universe in which time takes place. So, this is refuted, supposedly, with the idea that there's no such thing as time. That time doesn't exist. That time is all a big illusion. Now, that is wrong, but it's also fascinating. And so before we go into why it's wrong, I want to take a little while to kind of look at the idea. The idea is what's called the B theory of time versus the A theory of time. The A theory of time is the normal theory of time. Now, whether the A theory of time or the B theory of time is correct does not really, I don't want you to get confused here. It's not relevant. That's my point. It's not relevant to the Kalam cosmological argument. Not really. It doesn't defeat it whether you take an A theory of time or a B theory of time. But let's take a little while to understand what the B theory of time would be. It's the idea that there is no such thing as time. It's all a big illusion. And to help us attempt to visualize that, let's try to visualize something that also doesn't make any sense. So, when we say B theory of time, we mean like that time curves back in on itself, which is really confusing and weird. Or, think of it this way, space. Does space curve back in on itself? And you say, wait a minute, Ben, what are you talking about, Ben? Space curves back in on itself. Well, let's think about the physical universe itself of space. That if we, I move from here to Kansas, that's a distance across physical space. If I move from here to the moon, that's a distance across physical space. How far does that go? Does it go an infinite distance? Well, it can't, because that would be an actually infinite number of things. And for a quick review, the problem with an actually infinite number of things is that it means that math would completely fall apart. And we know that math has to work because it's analytically true. So, an analytical truth is what David Hume called it. 1 plus 1 equals 2, because 2 is just really a restatement of what 1 plus 1 is. So it's an analytical truth. And the reason an infinitely large universe would cause that problem is, you can imagine Hilbert's Hotel. Okay, and let's say that Hilbert is this guy, and he imagines that there's a hotel with an infinite number of rooms in it. And let's say that in that hotel you ask everyone in an even number of rooms to move into the next room up and move into odd number of rooms. Or let's say this way, an infinite number of people show up, and you tell them all to get into odd numbered rooms. So how many people have you put into your infinitely large hotel? Infinity. How many rooms do you have left? Infinity. So let's say that the hotel is full and all of the odd number of people leave. How many people left? Infinity. And how many people are left? All the even numbers, which are infinity. So infinity minus infinity equals infinity. Or you could say everyone after the number 10,000 left the hotel. Well, how many people left then? Infinity. And how many people are left in the hotel? 10,000. So infinity minus infinity equals 10,000. So it mathematically makes no sense. That's why it's logical absurdity and an impossibility to have an actually infinite number of things. If you're uncomfortable with the idea of logical certainty, I'll put it to you this way. If you don't have logical certainty, then nothing anyone says makes any sense or has any meaning ever. I don't know how to defend that without taking up a lot of your time. But let's put it to you this way. If you were to say that I don't need logic, then I would ask you, do you want my response to be logical or illogical? Okay. So anyway, the universe can't be infinitely large, as we just said. So therefore, well, how is that possible? I mean, we can't visualize, if you walk up to a wall, and the wall is the edge of the universe, there has to be some concept of distance beyond the wall, right? And the thing is, just because we can't visualize it, doesn't necessarily mean that the universe can't be curved, because it's impossible for us to imagine three-dimensional space being curved. And the way to understand this is like, well, what if we were four-dimensional beings, or beings that existed on some higher plane? Then it wouldn't be a big deal. And you say, well, Ben, what are you talking about? Well, imagine a universe that's inhabited by nothing but two-dimensional beings. Beings that can only move forward, backward, right, and left, but they can't move up and down. They have no concept of what up and down means. It's meaningless in their universe. They would build little two-dimensional houses and go in and out of them. They're two-dimensional doors. But you are a three-dimensional being, and you could step over their wall and just walk into their house. But from their perspective, you walk through the wall. And so that's kind of the idea, that if you existed as a three-dimensional being and entered their flat universe, they would have no concept of like what you really are. And you could understand all kinds of different proportions on space that they could mathematically model with numbers, but they couldn't visualize it. And so that's the thing. We can mathematically model that space is curved like a sphere, and that trying to go past the edge of space is like kind of like trying to go off the edge of the earth, you know. But the question is, can time be curved like this? Now this is where it gets fascinating, because as I said before, it doesn't matter. It doesn't refute the Kalam cosmological argument for the existence of God. Because if time is curved, then essentially it keeps going in a circle, right? You keep coming back to where you were in the circle. But that's not really what we mean when we say time is curved. So if you think that time keeps going in a circle and keeps repeating itself, that's not really what we mean, because you would have to say, well, I went around the circle one time, and then now I'm on my second lap, and I'm repeating all the events of the last lap again, and then again. And so how many times have I been around the circle? You see, when you say time is repetitive, you're not really saying that time itself is circular. For time itself to truly be circular, an event would have to happen before and after itself, which is very difficult to make sense of, right? And so what that means is, on that B theory of time, where time is curved, the universe would have no point at which things happen one after the other. All events, past, present, and future, would happen at the same time. Now what's fascinating about this is exactly what Christians have said for a long time about God. If you open up to, John chapter 8, Jesus is having an argument with the Pharisees. They eventually call him a demon. he says that they are following their father, the devil, and they say Abraham is our father, and then he says if you were really sons of Abraham, you would listen to me, because he rejoiced at the thought of seeing my day and was glad. And then they say, you're not even 50, and you've seen Abraham, who would have lived approximately 1,500 years before that, something like that. And he says, before Abraham was, I am. In other words, before Abraham was, I am. So he took the tense out of it, and he just said, I live in an eternal present. I am there at the time that Abraham was. I am there right now. And so at this, they picked up stones to stone him, because their word, this is their concept for God as Hebrews. And in fact, the Hebrew word for God, Yahweh, means I am that I am. God exists in the eternal now. So the thing about the B theory of time that makes it irrelevant to the Kalam cosmological argument for the existence of God is that all it does is takes the universe and makes it smaller, and just makes it your little universe that you live in. In other words, it makes it subjective. There's no objective time outside of your subjective experience of it personally. Because the thing is, I experience time, you experience time, we all experience time on our own personally. You know, you experience events happening one after the other. And that is just the way it is. You could say, well, it's not the way it really is. Well, it's still my experience. It's still happening for me, so it's real. In my world, there are events happening one after the other. And so the point is, your little world, where events happen one after the other, has to have a beginning. And it either began with nothing at all, or something caused it to begin, and we're back at the Kalam cosmological argument. Because the Kalam cosmological argument doesn't need the entire universe to, be caused by God. It just needs something outside of time to cause you to exist. Now, your little world to exist. And you could say, well, then it's not really God. Let's say there is a being outside of time that, caused my little world to exist. Here's the problem with saying that that's not God. It has to be God, and the reason why is because a being outside of time, or a being for which time is in a B theory state, would take no time to gather all information and knowledge, so therefore it would be an all-knowing being. It would take no time to do any actions. And it would be able to comprehensively make a plan that accounts for all events, past, present, and future, because it is at past, present, and future, and it would be a being that would literally could just make one choice in its existence, and that choice would account for everything that ever happens. And so, essentially, when people say that time is an illusion, they're not actually disagreeing with the Kalam cosmological argument. That's exactly what the Kalam cosmological argument is attempting to prove. That there is a larger realm of existence where God exists, where time doesn't exist. And that is the real reality. And that God just created our little reality where time works. And you could say that, well, time is an illusion. Well, it's not an illusion. I mean, it's not fake in the sense that the illusion itself is real, although it doesn't represent what reality ultimately is. And so, the point is to say that time is an illusion doesn't disprove the Kalam cosmological argument at all. And what this means is exactly what the Bible has said for a long time, that the arguments for the existence of God come from the things God has created. Your realm of existence, the things you experience every day, events happening one after another, would be an example of that. Exactly what it says in Romans 1:19 and 20. That you can tell God exists and what He's like from the things He's created. So, I hope that made some sense. I assumed with this video that you knew something about the arguments for the existence of God. I didn't go into the people who argue that, nothing can actually be the cause of the universe, or, some of the other refutations, Zeno's paradox, or the idea that it doesn't have to be God. Actually, I did go into that one. But we could go into it more. But that's all we're going to say for now. I hope you enjoy this video, and thank you for your time.